My guest today is Getrude Matshe, and she is a 3 times TEDx speaker who has been described as a vibrant bundle of African energy. I love that. Whose zest and passion for life inspires everyone she meets. Getrude's passion is to help people find their individual life purpose. She's an author, a serial social entrepreneur, a business mentor, and a philanthropy consultant. And Gertrude says that her mission is to empower and mentor women to find and use their voices. I help to build their self-confidence and eliminate self-limiting beliefs in a safe, trusted, and nurturing network. I think Gertrude is our people. Welcome, Gertrude. Thank you so much for being on Living Inside Out.
Thank you for having me. This is an absolute honor.
Amazing. And just so you know, listeners, Gertrude is all the way in Melbourne. So we are feeling extra special today to have to speak to somebody halfway across the world. And I do know we have listeners in Australia and New Zealand, but this is the first guest we're having from there. So this is exciting for me. So Gertrude, I want to find out how you discovered your purpose, because it's such a specific and heavy, if you like, purpose to carry. How did that even come about? How did you come to the point of helping people find their life purpose?
I think I stumbled on my purpose at an early age with the help of my parents. My mother said I could talk before I could walk. And I was one of those little kids in the back of the classroom talking, getting punished for speaking. And they harnessed my gift by pushing me to go into drama class, public speaking, debate. And I learned to use my voice at a very early age. And when I grew up and started seeing that there are people who are voiceless, people whose stories will never be told, or people who just don't have the confidence to stand and speak up, that became my vocation. My passion is to help people to find their unique voice and to use it.
That's amazing. Oh, wow. But was there a particular moment? So obviously having parents that were supportive is incredibly huge. Not everyone has that. I was also blessed to have had parents like that encouraged me to use my voice and be myself. But was there a moment when you decided, I recognize I have a voice, but I specifically want to help the voiceless with my voice?
I distinctly remember the day. I would have been 16 going on 17, and I had gone to visit my grandmother. So my mother comes from the Eastern Highlands of Zimbabwe. And World Health flew into our village in a helicopter. And they were dropping flyers and condoms to people who could not read, people who were illiterate. It was an AIDS awareness campaign. And I'm watching the parents running and catching these pieces of paper, looking at the cartoon characters. They couldn't read it because it was in English, and scrunching up the paper. And the next minute, they're lighting their fires. I watched the children ripping open the condoms and blowing them up into balloons and running around the village with balloons. And so it was a totally ineffective AIDS awareness campaign. And I plucked up the courage to write to World Health, and I shared what I had observed and how ineffective their campaign was. And I asked them if I could write a play that had an HIV theme to it. I was part of the Zimbabwe Association of Community Theaters, and we were young political activists spreading political messages against the regime through plays. So in Zimbabwe, you couldn't have a public gathering without a permit from the government. Freedom of speech didn't exist. But we followed a Kenyan playwright, his name was Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who brought down the Kenyan dictatorship by writing political plays. And because if you are in a school setting, you can bring people, they can gather, nobody asks any questions. So that was what I was doing at that time as a political activist. And so World Health responded, and I was funded to create an all-women's theater group. And my passion was to educate my cousins, my relatives, people who didn't have the privilege of going to school, and just conscientizing them about the spread of the AIDS virus and what this virus was all about. So that was the beginning of my work, so to speak. That's really where I found my vocation, my reason for being. And it has been an incredible journey, empowering people with knowledge, with skills. I watched a lot of family members dying in the 80s. So my grandmother had 11 children. She had 34 grandchildren. 19 of my first cousins died of AIDS,
Wow.
including my youngest brother. So I had 49 orphaned children on my side of the family in 2001 when I moved to New Zealand. On my ex-husband's side, there was another 40 children. So taking that responsibility to look after all of these AIDS orphans was part of what I did. And I self-published my first book, looked for free speaking opportunities so I could sell the book and raise money for school fees.
Mhm.
So I have helped educate well over 20,000 children in the last 20 years, paying for school fees, food, medication, clothing, shoes, books, stationery. And it's just been, like I said, a very incredible journey to have found my passion. And it's all about educating Africa's next generation.
Wow. And you are absolutely incredible for being so generous with your life, because often we find that when people are searching for their purpose or trying to live out their purpose, there is a reluctance to sacrifice fully, and literally recognize that purpose does not mean something you do on the side. It means that's what defines your life. And just as you were speaking, I was identifying a number of traits. Obviously, courage is what stood out for me, in the sense that you wrote to World Health Organization at that young age to say, can I stage a play? Can I write a play to spread awareness? Then compassion stands out as well, because you could see that they were not reading, and you didn't simply say, well, it's not a big deal. These foreigners came and dropped stuff, and end of story. But the compassion, I would say, has continued as a thread, and obviously courage as well. You've spoken on TEDx 3 times. It's TEDx is not the easiest stage to stand on because you know that your words are going to be out there forever. But well done. It's truly an honor to hear this story and also learn more about your work with AIDS orphans. There's just so much in there, but I wish we had all the time in the world. I really want to sit with that, but I'm sure we'll come back to it. And talking about TED, what's been the most powerful life lesson that you've learned through your experiences, and how has it shaped your message to the world? And for your past talks, was there a running thread or through line through all of them that you could say they were all related to each other?
Yeah, I stumbled on a very happy accident, I like to say. All of my TED Talks are about the Ubuntu philosophy. So
Mm.
when I moved to New Zealand 25 years ago, I started talking about Ubuntu, but a lot of people thought Ubuntu was the Linux operating system. And I realized that there's so much misappropriation of African content.
Mm.
People take our ideas, they repackage them, they
Wow.
don't acknowledge where the knowledge is coming from. So Linux based the design of the Ubuntu operating system on our African philosophy, but not many people know that.
Did not know that.
So I was writing my first book and I decided to call my book Born on the Continent.
Mhm.
Subtitle was Ubuntu.
Okay.
And I wrapped my personal story around the philosophy to illustrate what it means. And the reason why TED organizers have invited me to come back 3 times is because I can talk about Ubuntu in business. I can talk about Ubuntu in family, in community. It's a philosophy that fits into so many different spaces,
Right.
and I can explain it from different perspectives as well. So I became a thought leader at a time when there wasn't a lot of books written about Ubuntu. I think Nelson Mandela made it very mainstream when he was in office. And it changed the trajectory of my life, really. It really did. It's been a very fascinating experience.
And for those who don't know what the philosophy is, can you explain it, please?
The literal translation of Ubuntu ngamuntu ngabantu is a person is only a person through other people. It is our way of expressing the condition of being human. In Southern Africa, we believe that humanity is one, that there is no you, there is no me, there's only we, and that we are an organism, we are cells of the same body. So if I cut my finger and I start to bleed, my white blood cells will rush to that point to heal it. And that's how we should be reacting to each other in the world. So that if we hear that there's an earthquake in Haiti or a war in Ukraine, if every human being on this planet pulled out their wallet and gave $1, we can restore these countries in a heartbeat. But we are living in a sense of not enoughness right now, a sense of scarcity of you and me and not we. So my passion is really to wake people up and remind us that our strength is in collaboration. Our strength is in compassion. So when I explain Ubuntu, there are 4 C's and an E. The E stands for empathy. The 4 C's are compassion, collaboration, connection, and community. And those are the pillars that hold humanity together. So it's been amazing, like I say, to be able to share this body of work, which was passed down to me through oral storytelling. It's a way of life in Southern Africa. In South Africa, when we greet, we say sabona, which means I see you.
Oh,
And it's not the seeing of sight, it's my acknowledging your humanity and mine.
really love
So
that.
it's an amazing spiritual way of being.
Mm-mm. That's beautiful. I see you. It reminds me of Namaste, which it's
Yes,
said in Hindu, which is the light inside me recognizes or honors the light in you. I
fantastic. Yes.
You mentioned that we're in a state of not enoughness. What do you think is the cause of this? Because I see it as well. I see it with my children's generation where, it appears people are becoming more self-centered than ever. People seem to be the focus is really more on me, much more than it was when I was younger, when I was growing up, even communities. So I'm from Nigeria and I live here in the UK. And I remember when I came to England, that was in 1990, the community spirit was a lot stronger then, or it seemed a lot stronger then, where we'll meet each other. I mean, if you saw another Nigerian, you were practically family, regardless
Yes.
of where you were from or whether or not you even knew each other back home. My husband, when he came from Nigeria, he lived with a Nigerian family that he'd never met before. Someone just introduced him to them and he needed a place to stay. And he went on and lived with them for a good 5 or so years. And they remained close family friends today. But I don't see that sort of thing happening much these days. Why do you think people have become more self-centered? And if I'm correct, if you think I'm right, and also why are people moving around with this mindset of I've got to get all I can because it's not enough out there?
I think we have taken on a lot of our colonial predecessors' ways, and we have forgotten our way of being.
Mm.
You know, capitalism is all about taking as much as you can for yourself, whereas we are communal people by nature. You can go to any part of Africa. You will never meet another human being and not acknowledge their presence. You nod, you greet, you have a conversation. We survived because of our communal way of being. Nobody starved. There was always a sharing of food and resources. So I read a book by Ngugi wa Thiong'o called Decolonizing the Mind.
Mm.
And I think as African people, we need to try and go back to remembering who we are and how we used to be, how we used to live in that communal way of being, whether we're out of Africa or not. And I find it very, very sad, what you're saying. I'm living here in Australia. I've met a few Zimbabwean people. I've met a few other people of African descent, but the Kenyans will stick to themselves. The Zimbabweans will stick to themselves. The Malawans, we
Right.
are not coming together as a people, even when we're outside of Africa, which is
Mm.
a very sad thing to see as well.
Yeah.
And
I
we're suspicious of each other. We don't support each other. We pull each other down.
right, right.
We've taken on a lot of Western ways that are destroying our communities, and it's a very sad thing to see.
It is indeed. I think part of it as well is really just this whole concept of globalization, social media, the colonialism still very much alive and well because the West is being touted as the way to be. And so people are drawn. I mean, I go to Nigeria frequently because my family is there, my brothers and my parents live there. And
Mhm.
it never ceases to amaze me how many Nigerians have got American or British accents that have never even left the country, and it's not because they've watched too many movies. It's
Yeah.
actually an intention to develop, quote unquote, their accents to the point where it's more westernized because it's seen as more valuable or better than our African accents. Same thing with names, where we're losing our names and our and the richness of our culture.
Mm.
I've met Nigerian kids who don't speak any Nigerian language and they live in Nigeria, like they live in Lagos and they don't speak Yoruba, or their parents' mother tongue, their mother tongue they don't speak. And it does sadden me. I worry, I confess, I haven't done the best myself because my children don't speak my language. But that's also because I grew up in a part of Nigeria that is not where my parents are from. My dad was in the military, so he moved around quite a bit. And I
Mm.
didn't grow up speaking a Nigerian language, even though I understand it perfectly. And my son said to me, Mom, you've really robbed us because we're losing our culture. Like we don't speak the language. And so it is quite sad. But how do you think that we can come back to, as Africans, begin to develop the natural and I don't want to say genetic, but it really is genetic way of the communal spirit that we were born with, and it's still within us. It's just that we're ignoring it and we're choosing something else. How do you think, or what steps can we take as individuals towards getting back there? And do you think it's even possible?
I think it's very possible. In my second TED talk, I called it Ubuntu 2.0,
Mm.
humanity's operating system. So I went back to using technology jargon to describe this speech.
Mm.
And to install the humanity operating system is very, very simple. You put your family first. It's what are you doing in your own home with your husband, with your wife, with your children? Are you really paying attention to how they are? You know how sometimes you can come from work and you ask the kids, have you done your homework? How was school? But are you paying attention to really seeing that your kids are okay? The next thing you have to do after your family is your community. Have you talked to your next door neighbor? Have you found out how they're doing? I grew up in a street where there were 100 families. I knew everyone by name. I knew the fathers, the mothers, the children, the grandparents, the uncles, the aunts. I could identify everybody who was connected to my street. But right now, I'm living here in Australia. I don't know who's my next door neighbor to the left. I don't know who's to the right. When I lived in the UK, I remember the old lady next door to me died.
Mm.
And we found out she was dead because the milkman kept coming to leave the milk bottles outside her door. 2 weeks later, somebody died next door and nobody knew that she had gone.
Mm.
And then if you have some bandwidth, some energy to make a difference somewhere else in the world, that would be the next step. Be philanthropic in supporting other people in other countries. So it's a very simple process. It's a smile at a stranger in a supermarket. There's so much loneliness right now. COVID-19 didn't help either. It further pulled us apart. People are suspicious of each other. Somebody coughs, you want to move aside. But I also think COVID-19 came to remind us that we are an organism. I'm actually working on my next TED Talk, and it shines a light on what COVID-19 did for us as human beings. We are literally a breath away from affecting and infecting each other. Do you realize if one person in the world is not okay, we're all not okay? So we are an organism. It will spread, it will affect all of us. And COVID-19 came to give us pause, to lock us into our homes. People had to deal with their children. The animals started coming back into the neighborhoods. All of the damage that we had done stopped for a couple of years because we weren't out there destroying nature. So some of these pandemics, these catastrophic events happen for a reason, for us to be reminded to reconnect.
I love that. It's like a resetting, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I don't know if farmers still do that, but remember they used to leave the land to go fallow for a number of years just so it can regain its nutrients and get enriched again.
That's true.
Mm.
That's exactly what we need to do.
What we need to do. I agree. It's a shame that we have to wait for a catastrophe for that to happen. But I think, like you said, starting at home and building stronger relationships at home and then extending it outwards to our community and
Yes.
philanthropic work also helps us gradually to get back there, to reclaim our humanity. I'm going to switch it up a little bit, and I want to ask about limiting beliefs because this is something that many of us struggle with. Anyone who is desirous of discovering what their purpose is in life, the place they stand in the world, where they fit, has to overcome limiting beliefs before they can come out of their shell to be able to do that. So have you dealt with that personally? And if you have, how have you overcome them? And also, what advice would you give to people who might be feeling stuck because of limiting beliefs?
I think as human beings, we all get stuck.
Mm.
We all doubt ourselves, that little voice in your head that says, who do you think you are? This isn't going to work. It's going to fail. But what I have succeeded in life is I hear the voice, I acknowledge it. I thank it for showing up because it's really your ego that's trying to protect you from getting hurt, from danger. That voice has a purpose, but you have to start talking to it and having conversations with it.
Good idea.
So when my self-doubts show up, I say, listen, I need to do this. I know I have the ability to do it. And one of the things I have learned from my life is if you have an idea, if you have a passion to do anything, you are already born with the knowings on how to do it. No two people are gifted with the same desire to paint a picture, to start a business, to move to another country. We all have these seeds that are in us intrinsically. And when the seed tells you to move, tells you to do something, and you follow those promptings, 9 times out of 10, you will figure out how to do it. It's like watching a child learning how to walk. Nobody teaches you how to walk. If you watch a little baby, they will stand up and fall down and stand up and fall down. And those are the failures that we have in life. And you eventually learn to put one foot in front of the other. The next thing you know, you're running. That's life. So I think for me, failure I failed so many times in my life, it doesn't scare me anymore. My idea of failure is not having tried.
Mm,
If I have a desire to do something and I don't give it a go, that for me is failure.
I agree. That makes so much sense. And I absolutely love that. It's funny because when I coach clients, one of the questions I ask to them when they're feeling stuck is, I know you don't know, you're saying to me, you don't know how to proceed from this point, but if you did know, what would it look like? And surprise, surprise, they start coming out with all of the solutions. Oh, I'll do this, and this is what will happen. I'm like, okay, so we have the answer. Like you, I agree. I believe that everything we need to progress is already within us, like a seed, it's inside of us. And it just needs nurturing and growing. And like you said, one step in front of the other. It's the sitting down and holding on to the seed without planting it. That's what failure really is. Like that, you're only guaranteed that it's not going to grow if you hold on to it. But if you plant it, it will eventually bear fruit. And it doesn't happen overnight either.
Yeah, my
Now,
grandmother used to say that when you're born with your fingers clutched. You're born holding your gifts. And
mm,
some people go to their graves like this. They don't unleash those gifts into the world.
hmm,
So we
that
have
is
to
so
let people.
powerful. That is so powerful. I feel like you need to write a book of proverbs and sayings because I can tell, Gertrude, that you have a lot inside you. It's been passed down and that you've learned over the years because that's just such a powerful illustration and it says it all. If you're an artist and you're watching this interview, consider drawing a piece of art that represents exactly what Gertrude just shared with us.
I love
Oh,
it.
God. So when because you a lot of your mission focuses on empowering women to find their voices, what do you believe are the biggest barriers that prevent them from speaking up and using their voices? And then how can you help to overcome these challenges?
A lot of times it's our upbringings, it's
Mm,
our culture where women should be seen, not heard.
mm,
It's sometimes just that internal fear.
mm,
They say that public speaking is one of the biggest fears that any human being has. So, learning to speak and to stand up and be seen is like wearing a new pair of shoes. When you buy a new pair of shoes, it feels icky, they're tight, they're uncomfortable. But the more you wear them, the more comfortable that it gets. So, it only comes with practice using your voice. Your voice, you have to realize, is an instrument. It's like a piano, it's like a violin. You will never see a pianist just waking up one day and knowing how to play the piano. They practice for hours and hours and hours. And so the same thing applies to speaking. You get good by practicing, you get good by standing in front of people and feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
exactly. Absolutely. That's really good advice. Thank you for that. And confidence. A lot of people will say to me, I know that I can do this, but I just don't have the confidence to, or I know that I want to speak. I know that I want to change careers or come out of this bad relationship, but I don't have the confidence to. Can you share some practical steps to help build confidence?
I learned at a very early age to play with the energy of who I am becoming. So
Mm,
I have very, very clear visions of where I'm going, what it's going to look like at the end. I think that's the starting point. A lot of people don't know where they're going. They don't know what that big dream actually looks like. And once you can visualize it in your mind, take a piece of paper, write it down, even if it's just a few notes or a diary entry. Now it's out of your head, it's part of physical reality, right?
mm,
So for you to build a house, you bring in an architect, you describe what the house looks like. The architect makes a sketch. The next thing you've got the plans. You give that to a builder and that the building is built. It's the same thing with your life.
Right.
You have to see what the end picture will look like. And you have to just take one foot, put one step in front. Like I said, it's baby steps until you get to where you're going. And they also say that unless you have the coordinates to where you're going, if you put a ship on a course without a destination, will it ever get there? So, what are your goals? What are your dreams? What do you desire to manifest in your life? And then, if you're not sure how to get there, I do a lot of meditation, I do a lot of praying, and I normally go to sleep with a question in my head. And I ask my future self, how did we do it? I know I'm going to do it. I know I'm going to get there. But the energy of who I am becoming can help me get there even faster.
Right.
And what happens is a lot of my knowings, my knowledge, my ideas, they come through my dreams because your subconscious mind doesn't stop working when you sleep. You think you're asleep, but your brain is processing that thing that you were trying to figure out during the day. And then when you wake up in the morning and you have these light bulb moments when you're in the shower, and boom, you know exactly what to do to for your next step. Or you talk about it to people and you say, this is what I'm working on. And then one person might say something, the next person might say something. By the end of the day, you've got the answer.
Yes.
So
I
learn to play with the energy of who you are becoming because she will guide you there. She's already there in the future waiting for you to come. So time is really an illusion. It's a construct that human beings have put together. So we wake up in the morning, get to the office at 9 and finish at 5. But if you were to play with this game that time is an illusion, your past, your present, your future exist in the same timeline, and you can zap into the future, go and sit and have a cup of coffee with the 90-year-old you and thank her for this work that she's leading you up to that point, you know?
Yes. Yes. Oh, that is incredibly inspiring. And I love the way that you used words to paint a vivid picture. I agree with everything you've said, and I have said very similar things, but completely differently. And I love the way that you've just explained it because I think it's so clear. I love the phrase play with the energy of who you are becoming or who you will of your future self. Recently I've been writing a lot about where my inspiration should come from. And all of us generally tend to be inspired by where we are. Whereas I've been writing about get your inspiration from the future, not from the present. And exactly what you said, I shared on an Instagram live the other day about how the future and the present coexist in the same space. It's not somewhere in the future. You're not going to the future. It's right there with you. And you can choose to cross over whenever you want to because they're running parallel at the same
Yes.
time. But
Yeah, that is so, so true. It's all about quantum physics and just realizing that everything is energy.
yes,
The
yes,
speed at which it comes to you is based on your belief that it already exists.
absolutely. Absolutely. No, you're right. I agree with you. And you've explained it in a way that I don't think I could have because much of this subject stays in my mind. Like I know it to be true. I journal about it. I don't often share because maybe because I haven't found the right words to explain it in a way that someone else will understand. But you've done a fantastic job of making it so clear. So thank you for that.
I
Thank
read in a book once that said, if
you.
you're not happy with your current reality,
Mhm.
be unrealistic.
Mm. Mm.
Dream that impossible dream.
Yes. Yeah.
Where you are now is not where you want to be. You know, when I look back 20 years ago, I had a vision to bring up my kids in a safe country. I had a vision to one day be a grandmother. I'm actually inside my dream right now. I became a grandmother 3 years ago. My little grandson is 3. My kids
Yeah,
have grown up, and this was the dream. I'm in it right now, but we forget to reflect back how far we've come as well.
exactly. Absolutely. And I think sometimes we may dream, but we forget that the reality of getting to the dream takes a lot of work, and sometimes the path is fraught with difficulty. And so what ends up happening is we're going through the season and we're dreaming and it's happening, but we don't recognize it for what it is because it looks nothing like we imagined it to be. And when
Mm,
you're living in your dream, if the dream has got some challenges that come with it, then we focus on the challenges and say this isn't what I asked for. When really
mm,
it is, you know, and like you said, it's necessary to go back and reflect and remember this was only a dream, and it does help. There was a time when I was in my business. I've got a location in central London, and there was a time that I remember thinking, this is not going to work. This is too hard, and this is happening, and it's challenging and tasking, and so on. And I went to the back of the shop because I was holding a conversation with a friend lamenting about the state of affairs. When I
right.
got to the back of the store, I found myself standing at a place where I want to say about a year or 2 years prior, I had stood at that same spot speaking to my mentor, telling him that I had found this location, and he was saying, "You better get it." And I was thinking I couldn't get it. And so here I am, a couple of years after that meeting with a mentor at the same spot. I'm lamenting about what I now had. And it hit me that once upon a time, my business was just an idea on my vision board, and it was an
Yes.
idea in my head, and now it's a physical reality. So no matter
Mm.
what it comes with, I better be thankful that this is where I'm at right now, and stop moaning because we do forget.
Uh, it is easy to forget, but that's just the condition of being human, and you have to
Human.
forgive yourself.
Yes, I agree.
But writing down those goals and having them in front of you all the time, I think it really helps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I'm so happy that you're chatting with us today because I feel like we're going to get so many comments and feedback on how you have blessed the audience. But before you go, I just want to touch a little bit on um, sustaining social impact. So many people want to create social change, but then they struggle to make it sustainable. They start off and then it fizzles out. What
Mm.
strategies do you use to ensure that? I know that your purpose is one and you're focused on your future, on the bigger picture, but what strategies can you share, I guess, to make sure that social enterprises are both impactful and sustainable long term?
The reason why I keep going back to TED
Mm,
is because the TED platform gives you global visibility
mhm.
and it gives you instant credibility,
That's right.
especially when you're working in the social impact world and you are a thought leader, you stand for some principles, you stand for a cause, you stand to want to make a difference in the world. You need to find a way to amplify your voice.
That's right.
What's happened in my life is a lot of people have taken up the torch.
Mm,
They've been inspired by what I do, and they're now replicating what
mm,
I'm doing in their own communities. And that's true sustainability when you can educate, when you can teach, when you can scale what you're doing so that even if you get run over by a truck today, your work doesn't die with you.
that's right. Abs-
And building teams, a lot of times people who are philanthropic are working in isolation. You're working alone. That doesn't work.
mm,
I remember when I had heart failure, all of my projects came to a standstill. Everything stopped. All of the kids were relying on me to raise money for school fees, the women's cooperatives I've set up throughout the African continent, everything came to a standstill. And that's when I realized that I'm not invincible. I'm not going to live forever. And if you really want to leave a legacy, it's about empowering the next generation, empowering other women to replicate what I'm doing.
Mm.
And this is how I'm scaling now.
Right. Right.
So no man is an island. Again, it goes back to those Ubuntu principles that if you work in the goodness of the greater whole, we are strong when we come together. You go further when you collaborate. Like right now, you're amplifying my voice through your platform. I'm going to meet people that I would never have met otherwise through this collaboration. And collaboration is a superpower that we all have as human beings to get things done.
I agree. Thank you for that. Victoria Falls bungee jumping, Getrude. I have to ask, what inspired you to bungee jump off the Victoria Falls Bridge 3 times?
My youngest brother had just died. I come from a family of 5. My brother died at the age of 29 of AIDS.
Oh dear.
And his death gave me back my life. You know, I had a fear of heights. I had a fear of swimming. That year, I first went skydiving in New Zealand. I jumped off the Victoria Falls Bridge 3 times. I went deep sea diving in Indonesia. I do not know how to swim.
Wow.
But his passing literally gave me back my life. I decided I didn't want fear to hold me back anymore. And so I did everything I have always been scared of. And it was just the most incredible gift that my youngest brother gave me. This life is very short. We think it's long, but it isn't. It's fleeting.
Right.
You're here 1 minute, the next minute you're gone, and the things that you were scared of, the things that you were holding you back are not as big as you think they are.
That is so true. That's speaking to me. I feel like I'm in a therapy session with you today. Oh, I could go on forever, but how can listeners get involved with your mission, and where can they find you and support the work you're doing? And also, well, we're going to have your books and everything to do with you linked in the show notes anyway, but if you could share that, please, that would be really helpful.
Well, people can find me through social media. I play a lot on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. And my books are available on Amazon, on my website, GetrudeMatshe.com. And I would love to connect with thought leaders. I would love to connect with those people who feel that they have a vision, they have a mission, they have something to say that can change the world. Our voices are powerful. They say that the richest places in the world are graveyards. They're full of people who had brilliant ideas, amazing stories, but they didn't have the courage to stand up and share those stories. They didn't even have the courage to write it down on a piece of paper and write a book. So don't go to your grave with your story. If you need the help and the support, I'm here. And as for my philanthropic work, I have projects throughout the African continent, here in Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. I create women's cooperatives and I help get women out of poverty with very small amounts of money. Aid has disenfranchised Africa. The money that's donated to most nonprofits doesn't hit the ground the way it's given. There's so much wastage in administration, in advertising, in setting up offices. So I want to get rid of that and create a bridge between those people who are in developing countries and those in the developed world so we can help pull each other up.
Getrude, I can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom, your energy, your proverbs, your stories. You know, you've reminded us all of the power of finding our voice and leaving with purpose and also lifting others up, and just reminded us to go for it, whatever it looks like for all of us. You reminded us to go for it. And I pray that your voice will continue to be amplified and reach every corner of the earth. Thank you so much, Getrude.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for amplifying my voice through your show.
Of course, anytime. Have a lovely day or night for you. You're in Melbourne. And I'll
You
talk to you
too.
soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.